Oats. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Today we're starting chapter 19. Just to a little bit to recap, what we started doing in chapter 10. We started giving multiple metaphor to understand divine ideas, and each metaphor has its strength and has its weaknesses. So when we compare metaphors and analyze what is the strength and what is the weakness of each metaphor, then between all the metaphors we start to get their idea. And this is the process of contemplation in Chabad Hasidus, comparing the metaphors and having that discussion, and then the mental discussion. And one of the metaphors for the first level of um, of creation is that, how is it that if there's only God, nothing else, nothing besides Him? Well, we see there's a lot of things around us. There's this video, and I'm sitting on a chair, and there's other people, and there's more things. How come we say there's nothing else besides Him? And one of the most famous metaphors is, you can picture something in your mind. You can picture a bench, a park bench, and next to the park bench there's a green tree, and there's leaves falling off the tree, and they're landing next to the park bench. And just because you think of these things, it doesn't make more of you. You're still one. You just have the potential to think of all these things. So we, by metaphor, are sort of like inside of God, and we're like thoughts inside of God. And this is very significant, because since God finds us significant enough to think about all the time, that means that we have a special mission. If we're here, we have a special mission, and there's meaning in our lives. And we don't add or take away from God in any way, because we are inside God. We are being created like ideas inside the brain. And um, then one of the metaphors that's brought is the metaphor of baseball pitching. When you have a person who's a pitcher and he has a career, there's so many pitches that he's going to do throughout his entire career, and they're going to be different types of pitches throughout his entire career. However, it's absurd to say, when you look at the pitcher, that those pitches actually exist in actuality right now. They're all in potential. So you have to say that the pitcher has all the pitches of his entire career inside him right now. But it's absurd to say that inside him there's pitch number 1, pitch number 2, pitch number 3, and they're all recorded, and they're just ready to come out. No, there's this one baseball player, and all these things will come out. So the same thing, when we re-engineer everything in the world, we will connect it back up to God before creation. And it's absurd to say that all these things existed in actuality, but in potential, absolutely, they all existed in actuality. That's before Tzimtzum. And then we gave 5 metaphor for Tzimtzum, like the idea of a teacher teaching a student, and he has to give like a short, like one-liner, and then expand on that. So even when he's giving a one-liner which the student can handle, the teacher hasn't forgotten all the details. Those are still revealed to him. So when God has to sort of absorb himself, his light, his revelation into himself, it only is for the student, it only is for us an absorption, but by him, nothing changes. That's the second stage, Tzimtzum. Then we explained that there's a logo which sort of is a concentrate of everything that was before, and that's called the Rishimu. Like just imagine the city of Hiroshima. What happened after the bomb? There was only a Rishimu left of it, of what was before. So after Tzimtzum, there's only some sort of like Rishimu left, but it's really a concentrate of everything before. And we brought 5 metaphor. One of the metaphors is a hand gesture. When you teach somebody and you use a hand gesture, so a person remembers better. So it's something like a hint to something that was before, and that is the first thing after tzimtzum. And then from the tzimtzum, from this rishimul comes a kav, which is a metaphoric ruler, which is going to measure all the circles. Circles meaning all the big ideas, all the anything that God wants to accomplish in the creation. And we had 5 metaphor for that. Also, the point of that metaphor, the strong point of all those metaphor, is that the kav and the circles are potential for everything that's going to happen afterwards. They're like the ruler, like a ruler is a potential for building a house. And now, then we started to speak about Adam Kadmon, which is the first character of man. Like, I want to accomplish all these things. Who is going to be the vehicle that's going to accomplish these things? What is going to be the vehicle? Like, you want to get to a certain place, but then you're going to say, well, I'm going to use a bicycle, a car. What is it? How am I going to get there? I'm going to fly there, helicopter. So God chooses this vehicle called Adam, man, the soul of man. And Adam had all the souls of all of humanity inside him. And we have been, for the last few weeks, last few chapters, we have been we've stopped giving 5 metaphors for each level. We've been trying to understand what is the difference between the way God wants something before Tzimtzum, how he wants it in the first big circle, and then how he wants things in Adam Kadmon, because we said that Adam Kadmon is really a subconscious want, meaning to say that some people have a good heart and everything that comes out of them is good. That means that there's some hidden want which powers all the wants. Now he wants to make food. Then he for people, he wants to make a soup kitchen, and then at a different time he wants to get winter coats for everybody. And obviously, there's some hidden drive in the person that is making him want to give out winter coats to people that need winter coats, or to give out food for people, for a soup kitchen that people need food. Or if a person doesn't like somebody else, they're going to find all different ways why they're not going to like them. But there's really some hidden drive inside the person why they don't like that person. So it works both ways. So Adam Kadmon, the first man, is really the want behind all the wants, the hidden want, which is that drive, which is going to give birth to revealed wants. And then those revealed wants give birth to intellect, plan, and emotions, which will make the person move to actually get everything done. So now in chapter 19 is the first time we're going to come back and we're going to say, well, when the 10 building blocks of creation, when do they exactly start to really come about? And the answer is, well, they're sort of born now. They're born together with the concept of the first man. And we're going to give 8 metaphor. Now, we've been giving 5 metaphor all along. So the truth is, when you look at the metaphor, the 8 metaphor that we're going to give, really you can, there's 5 categories. And something really funny that happens is that we basically repeat most of the metaphors in different orders again and again, and bring out a different point that these metaphors teach us. So we're basically using the same metaphors, and it'll be interesting to write a chart of all the 5 metaphors for before Tzimtzum, Rishimo, and Kav. Now we've been using one metaphor of the idea of wanting and building for the last few chapters, but now we're going to explain the 10 spheres being created in first man, and we're going to use 8 metaphor, but really there's only 5 categories. So let's start reading inside. And from now we can understand B'Sherish Eshes Spheres, the source of the 10 spheres. What is spheres? Well, a sapphire is some shiny stone. So let's say that these spheres are like 10 different shines. Let's say that the world is really vibrations. Everything is waves, like light waves and sound waves. It's all waves. So let's say these 10 spheres are 10 different types of like lights, 10 different types of waves. That's like spheres is going to be like the word sapphire, which means like the shine. And so Hanetzalim, and how did these 10 spheres come about? That's what Netzalim. Netzalim means they sort of like appear. They're not really a creation, they just appear from what was before. And tangible spheres actually are created by the expression of Adam Kadmon. So they're really created by Adam Kadmon, then but it's hidden. Adam Kadmon, it's subconscious. So then Malchus, the Adam Kadmon, has to create conscious spheres. This is written in the book, The Tree of Life, in the gate, which speaks about the rules. The way the everything works is from the expression, from the kingship, from the leadership of Adon Kadmon, for the Nasa Keser. This creates a driver, a crown. It's like the commander writes an order. So that's Malchus, right? Leadership. But that becomes the driver, the crown of the next level. The Atik Yemim. So what we just say before? Sorry, I just lost it. So the Kesser, let's go back for a second. Yeah, so the leadership, the last level of Adam Kadmon, Nasa Kesser, becomes the driver of Atik Yemin, of the attic, old days. Atik means like once upon a time. Antique, right? The Atik, it's like the word antique. Yomin means days. What's the difference between one day and another? It's different feelings. So Atik Yemim is really a reflection of Igulim. Just Igulim, everything's still hidden. And Atik Yemin is the accomplishment that was of that God wants to achieve, but it's in a hidden way. Now these accomplishments become revealed as something communicable in Atik Yemim. As we said before, there are two levels: the Igulim and the Yesher. In other words, Kav, they're the same thing. Igulim and Kav are the same thing. Igulim and Adam Kadmon, one is the light and the other one is the vessel. One is like the water, the other one is the cup. So, but it's hidden. So now Atik Yemin, it gets revealed. The water, the idea of the light, what God wants to achieve becomes revealed. Before we understand this, we first need to preface Binyan Esasfiris Hagunuzes Behelem, regarding these 10 spheres, these 10 sapphires, or the 10 lights, which are hidden in Adam Kadmon, in the first man, and how they become revealed. There is Miresh Adam Kadmon. And this is explaining the verse that God calls the generations from the head of where? So he says, from the head of Adam Kadmon, all the generations of all the people come from, they already were created in the head of the first man. Visa B'Sefer Yitzira, and it says in the Kabbalah Sefer written by Abraham, this is the first metaphor. This is like a flame, how it's connected to a coal. So this is a metaphor that God is like the coal, and when you blow on the coal, a flame comes out. So what are spheres? Spheres are not a creation. It doesn't make more of it doesn't make more of God, God forbid. It is just like a flame coming out of a coal. God is like the coal, and you blow on the coal, and spheres come out, just like a flame just comes out. High governor. Yes, is Rabbim, and the truth is there's many metaphors for this same idea. However, this idea can be understood even better through the second metaphor. By the way, that metaphor is the first time we're saying that. the idea of a light, of a flame connected to a coal. That's the first time we're seeing that specific metaphor. But he says you can, that what metaphor has a weakness, and a better metaphor is miyud kochas nefesh, from the 10 powers of the soul. The 10 powers of the soul are like 10 spheres. In other words, I like the 10 powers of the soul. I like, they come from the 10 spheres, the 10 lights, 10 shrines. I'm still fascinated by the fact that that RNA naturally has a shine to it. So I'm thinking, is that true of human DNA as well? Is that like, are we like these lamps? We just don't see it? Are we just made out of light? Maybe it is that way. But anyway, so these 10 powers of the soul, dehine yedua inyan helam vigilui, einu kispashtus kach mina etzem kamoi kach pelchin ispashel bepula. Basically, the 10 spheres is the idea of helam vigilui, something that's hidden, and gilui becomes revealed. It's not a new creation. It's just revealing what was there before. The same thing, like the flame. It's not a new creation. It was there before. You just blow on it, the flame comes out. Same idea. The soul just, when it becomes active, it creates 10 different. Like waves, 10 different spheres, 10 different powers, but it's not a new creation, and that's the idea of hidden, revealed. And it's not like he's pashtos kach be'etzem mina etzem. So spreading a power mina etzem from some sort of essence. For example, cause and effect. Something moves something else. The locomotive power of the instigator of the movement, and what was achieved, what happened through the movement, that is not the idea of Helam Vigilui. That's not the idea of something that was hidden becomes revealed. That's something new. Movement from one place to another, Koyach Apel, the power to, locomotive power to get something done, that's not what we're speaking about. Because the idea of cause and effect, cause and derivative, that's ilav alul, right? That's not what we're speaking about. What we're speaking about is something like the light coming out of the sun. So the first metaphor is spheres are like the flame that comes out of a hot coal. The second one is like just when the soul shines into the body, suddenly there's 10 powers. Or like the light of the sun. That's the third metaphor. Fourth metaphor, or like the light of the soul in the physical body. One second. So we have first, second. No. So third. So first metaphor is the fire from the flame. Second metaphor is the powers of the soul give life to the body. The third metaphor is like the light of the sun. Then he says, Kechayes er hanefesh b'kli aguf. So one second. The first metaphor, maybe the second metaphor is really the light. Yeah. Okay, I'm getting it straight. Sorry. The first metaphor is the fire coming out of the coal. Second metaphor is really the light of the sun. The third metaphor is the way the light of the soul gives a life to the body. Fourth metaphor is his chakmus kayach haseichel, how the brain is able to intellectualize. It's not a creation. It just shines. Kahai gavna, and similar metaphor. But the truest metaphor, he's going to give three, and I believe they're all really one. That's why it's only five metaphor. Like movement from a living thing. A baseball pitcher is going to pitch and going to throw the ball. Just that's a revelation. It's not a creation. It's a revelation of who the person is. And also like thoughts of the mind. We're always thinking. Unless we control our thoughts, they'll go the wrong way. So we have to always be feeding our thoughts. So it's like the thoughts of our the letters of our thoughts, or letters of our mouth. That's what a talking person does. They speak. So that would make 8 metaphor. But I think the last 3 are really 1, so it's only 5. Why? Because we're just saying thoughts. No, we're saying action, thoughts, and speech. Like thought, speech, and action, but in a different order. All these things are just revelation of what was before. V'kai Gavna and similar ones. V'chol ze yes amiti midimian shel hagushura behelim. And these later metaphors are more real than the metaphor of the fire being inside a coal. The fire is inside a coal. Begacheles, that's a coal. She'afa pisha gacheles haya hashelaheves behelim. Even though the flame was hidden inside the gacheles, awalahari akopanim muhus chaim shebecheles yatza. However, the heat of the coal went out. Hashelaheves. So in other words, there's some sort of transformation that's happening over here. The fire moves from inside the coal to outside the coal. That's not what we mean. Ve'ein za'amit is in gilui. That's not the idea of a gilui. Sheinu rak mebichinas mara the govern levad. Gilui means just like a shine, like a color. For example, the color of the apple is not the apple itself. The color of the apple should be red, which is the idea of being strict and focused. And inside the apple, it's sweet. It's a white color. So I don't think this would be the 8th metaphor. I don't think it's an additional metaphor. I think he's just explaining what is the idea of sunlight. The idea of sunlight is that the energy that we're speaking about, the spheres, are nothing more than a color of an apple. So there's only God. Spheres are nothing more than the color of an apple. There's only an apple, really. Like known. V'kach hu begilui helem etzem kayach hanefesh k'meach midas hachesed be'etzem shegilui shloi hainu. One second. You want to catch up with the green? No, because it's hard for me to see on the screen. Agilui helem etzem kayach hanefesh k'mei midas hachesed be'etzem shegilui shloi hainu kasher mitzad atzvus hamida zu be'etzem hanefesh hare mishavim rotzon v'seichut shel chesed. So what we're saying is that since a person is kind in their heart, then that gives birth to and want and an intellect to do kindness. V'tov tamid, and good all the time. Because that's what the person is deep inside. And that's why spheres are not a creation. They just a shine from the person. L'hepach. So spheres don't add to God. Spheres just are a shine of God. L'hepach. And the opposite, somebody who's a cruel person. Yeah, a cruel person. Mishaver rotzen v'seichel adin v'einish. It's going to give birth to a desire and to an intellect to give judgment and punishment. giving birth to the source of this want to do kindness, or the din, or to do strictness, it's part of the actual emotion. Just because a person wants, it's just, that's part of, it's not a separation. You just, however, once that is transformed into a certain judgment or the opposite, well, what's only happening is it's just his true colors. You know, you say people's true colors showing. Yeah, it's just his true colors. It's like like the revelation of movement, a living thing. Or like the life of the soul, it basically shines into a body. Our body is a rag. It's like a rag doll. It would absolutely not be able to do anything if the if soul didn't shine into it. Shu aguf mipnei, which is our body. Mipnei shu chai betzem, because the soul is living in essence. Souls don't die. Megala yosei betnua, chiyusa betnua. So because it's a living thing, so it's going to be moving and fidgeting. Right? You know, kids a little has less zichlesh than adults because there's the soul is like very active. Somebody asked the question, the souls don't die? No, souls don't die. But if a person has an addiction, they have to experience this, like the destruction of the soul, in order to detox from the addiction. In other words, the addiction is even worse than a lot of the like sins. The punishment from a sin is really a detox, because what happens is when a person does a sin, they do something that's not their real self, and then therefore they get connected to a bad energy which is not really them, and therefore to disconnect from that bad energy which is not really them, that's what the punishment is. The punishment is a cleansing, is a disconnection, so the person can return to them real selves, and it's really painful. However, a person that is really addicted, in other words, it's not just like one time they did something wrong, they're addicted, they think that their opinion, like when you contradict somebody and they get angry, they've made a mistake and they think that their opinion, and they're getting angry because they think they're getting killed, because they've made a mistake, that they think that their opinion, they don't realize who they really are. So that's like an addiction. If a, you know, that's an addiction. And to really disconnect from that, if a person doesn't disconnect, detox during their lifetime, so it's written that the person will have to experience the death of the soul constantly. Not the souls die, but he'll have to just experience the pain of death constantly. I don't know for how long. I've heard stories it's hundreds of years. It's much easier to do the 12 steps now in this world than to have to experience that for hundreds of years. So what happens to somebody that's really um, made a real big mistake on who they think they are, and they're addicted to have an antisocial personality disorder, that they're willing to hurt other people? So they would probably be experiencing the, you know, what they did just on a much higher level again and again and again and again. Right? The Gemara speaks about stories in the Talmud of certain people, and they caused such destruction that they didn't have like this temporary. Usually Gehinnom is temporary. Person disconnects for what they did, but let's say somebody did something bad which has it just affects everybody. It just has this pervading effect on this of causing more and more bad in society. So they're going to have to, they're not responsible just for their own, they're not responsible just for their own um, bad deeds. They're responsible for the other people that they cause to do bad things. So they would be experiencing this destruction like constantly. I don't know for how many hundreds of years or thousands of years. Okay. Yeah, so I'm saying that the soul doesn't get destroyed, but their experience of being destroyed is something the soul could experience. It's just that, you know, like in a dream, you know, in a dream, people like a bad dream, a nightmare, and something happens, but they like get up anyways afterwards. It just.
Okay, we have a question here. When you're done that question.
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So let's
no,
question.
Say. Just no, you tell me the question, I'll say.
I'm basically asking, like, if someone has a drug addiction, for example, can he cleanse himself? Is that what he's saying?
Okay, so he wants more clarity around this. So if someone has a drug addiction, is this cleansing process could be done in his lifetime, or are you talking after, or it's after his death that if he didn't take care of it?
No, you don't want to do it after the death.
So what are you talking about? This whole process of the soul, so to speak, coming to like experiencing its own going of existence, so to speak. That's an after death experience.
After death, but it could go for a long time.
So that's not the experience now, but a person could. So what's the process you're saying? Okay, well, let's take a step back for 1 second. What's the difference between what you're calling an addiction in terms of its effect on the soul and a person who doesn't have an addiction but does the same improper acts or things that are not the best use of his energy, but not out of addiction? He likes it. He does it whenever he decides to do it, but he's not addicted to it.
Well, already, well, it depends on the degree, but already, okay, if it's to the point where it disturbs his life, or isn't it that it disturbs his schedule or not his schedule. So that's, if it already disturbs his schedule, that's like really bad. So I think there's a difference between doing something wrong but it doesn't like start to consume somebody's life, or a person's doing something wrong but it's already consuming their life, like wasting all their time. That means they're really, really addicted.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, so so even if somebody does something wrong and they sort of have some sort of schedule and everything, every time they do that, they are connecting to something that's not the real them, and therefore they will have to detox from that. So like, let's say it brings like out of the pain to pleasure scale. Let's say on the pleasure scale 1 to 10, it's like a 9 or an 8. Let's say this thing is an 8. So, but it's not like they're just, you know, running their schedule, and this is not a good thing. We know it's not a good thing. So it's a pleasure level 8 on the scale. They're gonna have to experience a pain or a holy pleasure on the level of 9 to disconnect from that thing. So either in their lifetime they're going to experience a pain, which the pleasure they had an 8, so they're going to experience 9 level pain on the pleasure, and to disconnect them from that inappropriate connection that they made, inappropriately connected their soul to something that's not the real them. Or, and this is a better option, they can work so hard to be a good person, and they're going to get to a stage where they hit a higher level of pleasure than that pleasure of number 8. They reach number pleasure 9. And I'll tell you where this happens in the 12-step program is when they get human connection. You know how people have like, they have like this mentor, and then they have the crowd, and then so that human connection happens to be a higher pleasure than the, let's say, the drug or the alcohol. and that is able to disconnect them from the alcohol because they achieved a better pleasure. But that's a kosher pleasure because it's human connection. It's what God wants.
Okay, that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Either other people can injure another person's soul, the similar that they injure a body, of course, all the time. All the time. If you say something bad upon somebody else, it immediately injures their soul. It could, even if you think bad on other people, it could injure their soul. You know, the problem is that what goes around comes around. If we do that to somebody else, we're actually injuring our soul. Let's say somebody like abuses you, says something nasty, so you can then be angry at them, and like by being angry at them, you like damage them. You know, I got you back. But the problem is, if he's now going to get punished because of me, so I also get damaged because I made somebody else punished because of me. So it's not good to throw around this energy. So the more mature thing to do is, oh gosh, I don't want him to be punished because of me, because it's just I'm gonna suffer as well. It's just like it just bounces back. So instead, I'm going to just pray to God that he should like be fixed up without having to suffer my consequences, which I could bring on him by being upset at him. So I prefer, it's not a good idea to use these, anger tools against other people, because it will just, it's against me. In other words, it's going to be a boomerang, and I don't need that. The best thing is just ask God, help him to return to himself, and that he should stop damaging me. I don't want him to be punished because of me, but I want him to be. I want this person to stop. That's more of a mature attitude. We shouldn't be praying that somebody else should be punished because of us, but we should be praying that they should stop. And maybe you should pray that they should come to their senses, if that's possible. Much better to come to their senses while living. And the same thing when it comes to addictions, when it's to the point where a person's life is being disturbed, it's destroying their life, their relationships. It's much better to deal with that and do the 12-step program and connect to God while alive. Much easier, much better. The only thing that they don't do maybe well enough in the 12-step program is the idea is that you can't re-bring the bad energy in. In other words, a person needs to get to such a high level of kosher, good pleasure, the pleasure that God wants people to have because they're achieving something, to get such a high level, and that they don't even start to bring in the bad energy again from that previous habit of that life, of those inappropriate things. So really need to like work much harder on be doing good to stay far away from coming back to that negative lifestyle where a person's connecting to pleasures. Now the thing is, when a person connects to inappropriate pleasures, they become numb to the simple things in life which we're supposed to be enjoying, like a cup of tea with a nice sunset or whatever, or sunrise, may not mean anything to a person that's over stimulated their brain, and so they feel like they're dead, and they're always trying to feel more alive, and they're trying one thing, they're trying something else. They're oh, 1 second, where are we? Yeah, so so they're trying different things because they want to feel alive, because they overstimulated themselves with these inappropriate pleasures. So they have to do the 12-step program, ask for compassion from God, and that he should fix up their soul, that they could start enjoying life with us, the nuances of life, like humans are supposed to. Okay, let's go. So because a soul is something that's in essence alive, so it will give birth to the ragdoll body. Hadoimim, which is really, a doimim is an inanimate mineral. Shnikra chaye basa, and this is called the life of the flesh. Ki gilui rotzen zeh ba b'derech nivdal. And by the way, revelation of this desire to give, to want to be alive, shu inyan, it's something that's off the center of the soul. It's something that shines from the essence of the soul. Shu inyan shel chesed oish shel din. For example, if a person has a deep rooted desire, either they just have a good heart or they have a strict heart, din. Aval mokar amelid rotzen zeh hu ba mekayach etzem amida levad. What gives birth to this desire to do kindness or to do strictness, that's because there's a subconscious essential trait that the person has, and they don't really consciously necessarily know about. I'm just going to finish this point and we'll get to the question. Muvan memela, and it's understood automatically. Being that sheyesh kama ifane dvarim, that there are a bunch of things sheyolid rotem yuchad l'kol echad memokar echad shehu tolu be'etzem hamida tamid. So sometimes we're going to want this, and sometimes you want to want that. So it's like giving birth to different wants at different times. However, there's one essential, deep down subconscious want of the person that powers all of these. There's a brain, a way of thinking. A person justifies their kindness. They want kindness. They justify kindness. That's because he has kindness in his essence. It's always giving birth to a want, a conscious want, and a conscious justification for why they should be doing kindness, dafka specifically. And we see that a person can want a bunch of ways of kindness, and each one has its intellect. Like we said, there's an intellect of making a soup kitchen, and there's an intellect of buying warm coats for people. But that's being born and from this essential shine that a person has. What's the question that we had?
Are sicknesses of the body actually issues that the soul is working through?
So yes, but depends on if it was ignored for long enough. What's supposed to happen is that every night before you go to sleep, you destroy and disconnect all the inappropriate thought, speech, and action that you have throughout the day. It may not be even evil thought, speech, and action, but it is noise. It's blocking.
Well, any thought that is not evidencing a person's certainty of their connection to God. So if you say, "Oh, I can't believe that guy got that, and I didn't get that," he's having a thought that's expressing the fact that he doesn't trust God in that thought. He's thinking he didn't get everything. So that,
and emotions. We have emotions of fear, emotions of that. Otherwise, if we don't so there's a time to recognize it before going to sleep, to recognize emotions we had, to detox from the emotions by recognizing them. You really need to, like we said before, you need to really use the axe with a wooden handle is used to cut down the tree. So you really have to meet it with a similar level of regret. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. So if it was words, you actually have to say words. I sinned. I messed up. You have to say words to undo the negative words. You have to say, God, I messed up today. I said this, messed up. If it's an action, then you have to do some action to undo that action. Some tiny action. At least there has to be some movement. What do we usually do? We take that fist and we like we press against the chest, saying my heart made me drove me in this direction. I want to undo that action that I did, and I want to undo those words, and I want to undo those emotions. May be connecting me to something that's not the real me. And when a person like detoxes, then they can actually be happy because now their soul is free to reconnect to God while they sleep, while the soul is free again to reconnect to. So it's really a happy experience afterwards. So what if a person doesn't detox their emotions? So what could happen is, one second, we're going to answer that question and then we'll do what happens if a person, so eventually what could happen is it starts affecting the physical body and it could affect the immune system, but the immune system won't be functioning. Let's say a person goes through stress and they don't realize, they don't recognize that they went through stress that day, and they don't try to rectify and rebalance themselves for the next day. So they're now going through a period of stress without trying to rectify and pray to God to rectify it. So that could start causing an imbalance in the immune system, and then that could actually become a physical illness. You know, we have a great immune system. We could be exposed to viruses and everything and all good. But if we don't sleep and we don't have nutrition and we're under stress, somehow suddenly this virus didn't make any difference. Whatever it is, bad energy virus, whatever you want to call it, detox. Suddenly now it's affecting our body. So when we don't deal with things on a spiritual level, it happens in physical. But there's also the fact that we're human, so even greatest people can also be susceptible to illness. Even the greatest people that detox all the time, they're still susceptible. So they need to, because we're human, so we need to ask for compassion on our physical bodies all the time. 3 times a day, ask for compassion, that we shouldn't get sick, that our physical vessel, the rag doll, should actually be a vessel for the soul and continue working. And yeah, we see it now with all these sports people that suddenly are like dropping with heart attacks on the field. Can be the healthiest person. The vessel needs to be really perfect. It's really a miracle. It needs to be perfect. Just one little clot, and the whole thing doesn't work anymore. Right? It's really a miracle that we're able to function every day. We need to thank God 3 times a day or more. Every time we go out of the bathroom, thank God that this works, that the vessel works and is a vessel for the soul. Now, what was the question over there? We asked the question.
One question was, how do we do that when you're talking about, I think, clearing the resentments, the detoxing was a question. And
you have to think through everything that happened that day and say, well, maybe this, like, even if you can justify what you did, but better not. There is always an element of, maybe this wasn't the real me. It was done under stress. So again, we say the Ashamnu Vagadno, which means there's a, what's it called? How do you say vidu in English?
Confession.
The confession, yeah. So the confession is undoing the verbal, the emotion of the confession, the regret of the confession undoes the energy, and the fact that we bang on our chest undoes the action. This is not speaking about if we did something wrong to somebody else, that we need to rectify with that person. I'm speaking about just for ourselves, our connection with God. We did things that took us off the connection, and we're going to do this every day. We're going to have extra unnecessary thoughts. That's just part of being a human, but we need to detox them before we go to sleep.
And the final question over here is, would you do that emotionally too by creating a remedial emotion?
Explain.
I'm not sure where the question came in, so I'm not sure what he was commenting on, but in terms of if a person has a negative thought, the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, if a person has a negative thought, as soon as a negative thought comes in about another person, he should immediately replace that negative thought with a positive thought about that person, because it's not just a nice thing to do in the sense that he's not bearing a grudge or having hatred towards his fellow, and he's replacing the feeling of hatred or judgment with a feeling of love, which itself, loving your fellow is a commandment. But it's also in the context of what we're talking over here, if a person is if he's hosting a thought that's of judgment, resentment, negativity, hatred towards that other person, his vessels here that we're talking about here are now becoming in the shining of it is not so strong, because it's now tarnishing it with this distanced thought that's coming from a place of fear, lack, competition, and so forth. So the Alter was saying, immediately replace it with a positive thought about that person. You don't want, like, let's say we had
you won't be you're right. You won't be able to, just unless you go to the other extreme, you won't be able to nullify that thought.
Right. And we sometimes we kind of play with ourselves in the sense that we what's the word, pamper or indulge ourselves. But oh yeah, that guy really did bad for me. Oh yeah, really, etc., etc., etc. And it feels like a certain sense of mature thinking. I've got all my responses lined up. But I think if you want to take a metaphor for a second, is like, imagine you're sitting in a synagogue, you have a holy place, and someone comes in with some garbage and jumps it in the middle of the floor. What do? You'd get up right away, you sweep it up, or kid drops something in the middle of the floor, you would clean up right away, because it's a holy place. You don't want that experience to be tarnished by this improper thing in the middle of the floor. So the same thing is with our whole existence is the same similar concept as a temple to God. We call it a mikdash mat. God says, I will build a temple in each one of you, or you should build a temple for me in each one of you. So meaning to say that when this thought comes in of dispute, hatred, jealousy, envy, all the negativities, then you're kind of like dumping a whole load of stuff in the middle of the floor. And then you're like, oh, let's sit around and look at that for a while and talk about it. Maybe we'll analyze it some more. Maybe we'll spread it around and see what we can make with it. That's what you're doing. But that would be crazy if you're in the middle of a holy building. You would be like, let's get the bag and a shovel and what do you call those dustbin, and you'd move it out right away. So that's what the Alter was telling us, get it out immediately. Don't sit and try to analyze it. But this time what he did was really bad, and if I don't stop him now, he's going to do it again. No, the thing is, move on, get that out and get in something that's going to be a positive.
Right. Do the opposite. Right.
And doing the opposite is what I want to think. It's go back to the original question. That's for your own health. It's your own spiritual health, your emotional health, mental health, and your physical health, because you're immediately reversing. They have this sort of what the questioner said, remedial emotion. You're actually causing an emotion the exact charge in the exact opposite direction, which is actually going to create a healing effect on your body rather than a effect of contraction and effect of diminishing life. God forbid. You'll be expanding life instead.
Right now, and we're not doing this. Also, we have to keep in mind, we're not doing this just as a selfish self-preservation. What's actually happening is the soul doesn't want to be there, doesn't want to be inside the vessel. If a person keeps on doing things that's against the essence of the soul. That's why, like, for example, with drugs, all the pleasures that are attainable through drugs are also attainable through regular means. However, God wants people to work hard and make a contribution to the world, max themselves out and make a contribution to the world. And then he's going to cause the brain changes that the person will experience the pleasure, but the pleasure is not going to make them sick. And they're actually going to look more alive. Whereas when a person uses a back door for a pleasure, but they didn't put the effort into contributing to the world, that's what drugs are, back door. So the soul says, what on earth are you doing accessing this pleasure without doing the work? That's why I came here for. So the soul starts to leave, and then you see a bit of illness on the person's face, like a lack of life, like stoned, like we say person's like stoned. Because the soul is saying, hey, your experience, I don't want to be here. I came here for a job. You're not doing a job. You're supposed to work. If you work, we get the same pleasure. It's not going to cause damage. It's actually supposed to be here because it's going to motivate you to do more.
So amazing what you're saying, because someone said to me once, when a person has an addiction, it's because they're not feeling enough alive. And therefore they're going after something to try to create a feeling of being alive. And all those pleasures, all those experiences create a feeling of being alive. But what actually is happening, because it's not a genuine life experience, living experience, it's a substitute, then the person actually feels even less alive. As a result, they have even more stoned look. And then it's a vicious cycle. Now they have to pursue it again to try to get back to that fleeting sense of being alive. And then it's gone again because the soul doesn't feel fulfilled by it. And it just deteriorates. So you see that, God forbid, an alcoholic, they actually could die from the experience of alcoholism. It perhaps is not just a quote unquote physical ailment in terms of a cirrhosis of the liver, but the constant repetitive diminishing of their life through that experience of trying to grasp life and then failing and feeling less alive every experience. That is really the spiritual illness, the spiritual experience that is then showing up in the body, failing more and more and shutting down more and more.
Yeah, so the only way to get out of that is say, God, I messed up. I need you to reset so I can start making contribution again through hard work. And then we can attain those pleasures in that life in a proper way. Not that I'm looking for those pleasures. It's just a symbol that I'm doing the right thing. But when I work hard and I contribute and I enjoy it, it's just a symbol that I'm doing what God wants, and that pleasure allows my body to function normally, that I can do more. So it's an ultimate pleasure, damaging pleasure.
And it's so beautiful what you're saying, because you're talking about doing the work to have the pleasure. So on Shabbos, which is a time when we are now not commanded to being creating in the world, then we experience this pleasure that is in correlation to the work that we did during the week on two levels. One is on the physical level. So if a person worked, then he's going to have beautiful food on his Shabbos table. He'll have beautiful wine on his Shabbos table. So you're talking about all the pleasures the person could have are permitted in at some time and place, in some form. So a person could drink every night. If he drinks every night or uses drugs every night, he's not going to be able to go to work. He's not going to make any money. He's going to end up deteriorating and end up stealing to try to buy the money and the alcohol and the drugs. However, if he works and he goes to does his business, his entrepreneurialness, his wealth creation, Be of service to other people, then what will happen is he'll create the money he needs, the cash that he needs to be able to then buy a nice bottle of wine, and he'll be able to sit down and actually enjoy that on Shabbos. So the Shabbos is the culmination of the experience of all the reward for all the work that we did. So Alter Rebbe also explains this as in a spiritual context. The Sheishes Yomim Ta'avid, 6 days you shall work, is the mitzvahs of doing, the commandments that we're doing during the week. We're creating a reservoir. We're calling into being a reservoir of pleasure that is created from each one, divine pleasure that comes from each one of those physical activities that we do in the world that are commandments, whether it is a mitzvah of prayer, a commandment of prayer, or giving charity, and on, and obviously from the things that we're not supposed to do that we refrain from, the negative commandments. But that reservoir is created during the 6 days of work week of the labor of doing these mitzvahs, so to speak. And then on the Shabbos, that's when it's released and comes down, and we experience that spiritual pleasure that is the consequence that has been drawn down in during the week, and then now we experience on a Shabbos. So it really relates to what you're saying, and that's pure pleasure. So we have the physical pleasure of Shabbos, and we have the spiritual pleasure of Shabbos, which is based on the effort that we invested physically and spiritually during the week, which highlights your point that it's real pleasures in life are the result of an effort, of an engagement that we made in terms of serving God, serving others, being helpful to others, providing a service and value to others, and both in physical business type sense, job type sense, and in a creative sense, and in a spiritual sense. And that we then get the most incredible pleasure, physically and spiritually.
Right. It happens without focusing on pleasure. It's just supposed to happen to continue the cycle that our body will react from.
Beautiful. I was thinking, Rashem, we'll pause here on the mimer.
Yeah.
And then maybe we could speak together, and maybe you have something you want to bring out highlighting this evening. We are on the eve of the date of both the Yurtzeit, the day of the Yom Yelula of the author of the Sefer that we're studying, and also his Yom HaGeula. So the Yom Yelula is going to be on Shabbos, and the Chag HaGeula is going to be on Sunday. So maybe it's going to pause the recording. I'll make speak for a few minutes about the Mittler Rebbe, the author of the Gate of Oneness, and learn what we can learn from his life and take it to heart for all us and everyone that we're here learning together. So I'm just going to pause this.